Hiya! Welcome to this, my 101st episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, sifting my basket of media memories, and in this installment, titled Happy Town, that's where I met the second of two dead Minnesota ice fishermen in this set. I'll explain. Also, Ron Swanson is up to his mustache in meetings, we got a bunch of movies, a bunch of streaming, and file this under American Heroes, Jon Stewart contained the BP oil spill spring 2010. Welcome to the show. He doesn't have it on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy. First and foremost, I have a goal heading into my 8th year with this project. I'd like to boost the signal for this effort. I feel like I'm putting good thoughts and quality audio out into the universe, but it's been having trouble finding its audience. Episode 100 got like 30 downloads. If you're listening to this and you like it, first, thank you. I'm so glad. Please let someone know. I post promos along with my episodes. I'd be overjoyed if you shared one anywhere you felt like it. Also, I have a new video out, VideoFuzzy the Video number 11, celebrating 100 episodes. It's a brief couple-minute promotion of this project. Sharing the link everywhere I can share it, but if you can help me let folks know about that as well, I'd so appreciate it. That link is in my show notes. Ooh, and just as I posted episode 100 last time, this project crossed another milestone, achieving 15,000 downloads. Yes, that's across 100 episodes over the course of 7+ years, but I'm happy to believe that maybe some people are enjoying some of the work I've been putting into this and hopefully getting something out of it. In 8 years, no one has posted a single star rating or review to Apple Music. So if anyone hears this and enjoys it, clicking over to rate me would make my day. Episode 100 posted during my birthday week, so as presents go, that'd definitely be one. In the meantime, I hope you're enjoying this one as well. Oh, you're absolutely right. I should get it started so that we can enjoy it. Allons-y. And now, VideoFuzzy presents Fuzzy Feature. Post my interview with my sister in episode 100, and if you missed that, you gotta check it out. It's a lot of fun. I did track down her recommendation to me, Trey Parker's Orgasmo, as well as the 6-episode run of Queen Charlotte on Netflix. Quite well done. Holding to the format, however, my feature will usually draw from a classic collection, and this set, as usual, presented me with a lot of options. The David Tennant Patrick Stewart production of Hamlet, just for one example, perfectly outstanding. 3rd season and broadcast finale of Glenn Close and Damages, also quite good. And just like last time, I found a couple of shows exploring the same theme around the same time. Both Brothers and Sisters and Desperate Housewives, the gay couples were coordinating for parenthood with their surrogates. And I just realized as I was putting my notes together for this one that Arrested Development I encountered recently in the last set, I think, had a similar side plot. Jason Bateman as Michael encountered a gay couple working with Julia Louis-Dreyfus as his estranged lawyer to carry their child. But I was in the mood for something a little lighter this time, so although, since we're here, a blogger I follow, Jay Kuo, shared some news about his second child while he was tended to his mother's estate overseas in China. Jay is perhaps better known online as author of Ma in All Caps, a heartfelt family memoir sprinkled throughout with his mother's delightful day-to-day observations, which helped build a dedicated online following for his political commentary. So, as he hurried his way back to his latest edition, I wanted to wish him and the mother, naturally, and of course new baby Ronan and his big sister Riley, all the best in luck and health. Love to the whole family. I mentioned seeking something a bit lighter, storytelling-wise, and on Disc 1818 I found a 2nd season episode of Parks and Rec that really stood out to me. Felt like this was a good one to feature. Cold open of 94 meetings. Nick Offerman as Parks Commissioner Ron Swanson wants to know why he has a half a dozen people outside his office waiting to speak to him. Turns out Aubrey Plaza as his assistant April Ludgate has scheduled all of his meetings for March 31st, because she didn't think March 31st existed. Which she gives the rhyme for 30 days hath November, April, March, and September. June! Ron bellows. He asks how many meetings he's got today, and April says 93. He's seriously ticked off. April Ludgate is meant to be the impenetrable moat protecting Swanson Castle. Meetings for him are the 6th circle of hell, but as he realizes Amy Poehler as Leslie Knope is stoked to take on 93 meetings. Her very first instinct, in fact, is let's set up 7 more, make it an even 100. They call the team together, distributing the meetings among the staff. Even Chris Pratt as Shoeshine Guy Andy and Rashida Jones as Anne, who's there to meet with Paul Schneider as Mark. She doesn't even work there, but Ron doesn't care. Anyone with a brain and a pulse, Ron said, except Jerry. Jim O'Hara's Jerry Gergich. Ron tells Jerry he can go home if he wants. My guess is Ron thinks any meeting Jerry takes off his desk is going to result in more work for him anyway. Problem is, Leslie opened her patent accept no substitutes meeting Rex Proprietaire 3000 is out the door when the very first meeting she absorbs concerns the Wicks Newport nuptials at the Turnbull Mansion, a facility on the historical register, where the blushing Miss Potty 1994 bride and her eye-popping wealthy one foot in the grave already intended Susan Yeardley and Christopher Murray as Jennifer Wicks and Nick Newport Jr., respectively, have been messing around over there for weeks. They painted everything highly non-traditional colors, covered the original hardwood floors with black paint, punched holes in the walls to hang pornographic portraits, and, oh yeah, they're destroying a historically significant gazebo. The show pauses to take a sharp little poke at mid-19th century Pawnee, where a white woman secretly married a native man at the storied Turnbull gazebo, and in the blow-up once their families found out there were only 2 survivors, both horses. So Leslie, and for some reason Aziz Ansari as Tom, he wants next with the bride, are at the mansion and the dozers show up to clear the gazebo. Leslie chains herself to the gate, not noticing that it opens as a single piece rather than the middle, so the chaining was useless. Rookie mistake anyway, why not chain yourself to the gazebo? The wedding happens, the gazebo's gone, she makes one final plea for restoration at the reception, but everyone's tired of her.
Isn't that crazy gate lady?
Leslie finally admits to Tom that she'd been a little distracted by Mark wanting to move in with Anne, but yeah, mostly it's been the gazebo thing. Meanwhile, the meetings have been going on at City Hall. So many meetings. April's been fending people off with BuzzSpeak or telling people Ron is dead and his final wish was for her to take this meeting with them. Andy's been really enthusiastic about some of them. Anne diagnosed a couple of melanomas, and Ron himself has been dealing with people dropping trow in his office, requesting a ruling on how revealing is their Speedo. Over this nonsense, Ron lights into April about her terrible mistake, and end of the day, she comes into his office, informs him he has one more meeting. It's this one with me right now, and it's about me quitting. I quit. Ron is upset by this, but he's Ron, so he can't express it. He talks to Andy, who's been conflicted about his 8-year age difference with April, but tells Ron he should absolutely get her back. Ron goes to visit April at her house, meeting her extraordinarily conventional Midwestern parents, Larry and Rita, and her sister, Natalie. God! And his exchange with April is lowest possible key. Come back to work. No. Come back. I want you to come back. Well, I don't want to come back. The end. I was talking to Andy about you, and he made me realize I need you back at work. What did he say? Don't recall. Fine, I'll come back. Good. The final scene is a guy who missed his meeting with Ron and wants to reschedule. April is back at work in earnest, full steam defense mode. She offers him June 50th, or come back today at 2:65. Next opening is March 19th. Ron is very pleased. I mean, 2:65 is an actual time. It's 3:05, but I love what the writers came up with. March 19th is not an identifiable time, even if you allow 19th as a way of saying 11th. My birthday is March 19th. No one's birthday is March 19th, not even in leap years. Other potential times include the 8th of Never, Mayor June 14th, J. August Richards, Yo Mama, Henry VIII, Elftember 25th, and the way my life is going, we should be able to get together for coffee around 100 hours on the 5th Placido Domingo. The choices made in this episode are interesting. Ron's little dig at Jerry is brainless is weird, since Jerry at his worst can at least sit behind a desk and take some of the meetings. And sending Leslie and Tom out in the field was nuts, like sending the entire bridge crew on an away mission. The brilliance of creating this problem is stymied somewhat by the need to then address it. No audience is here to watch Ron Swanson conduct 93 meetings, or 94 for that matter, but I think all of us are here to watch him react to 93 meetings. There are geese in my duck pond, trash everywhere, kids on bikes, the stop sign was looking at me. Then cut to a stop sign with giant googly eyes on it, and Ron has to decide what to do about it. I'm glad he got off his butt and looked up April Ludgate's home address. I love her reaction to everything. I'm amazed as the series progresses that she develops an aptitude for city government. We get a little peek at this when she's fielding a strategy discussion with someone looking to push some measure through. April suggests you talk to the commissioner and then to city council, which is a sound approach. April, at the Diane directly to the camera, I have no idea what I was saying, which, since that was a perfectly reasonable set of suggestions, makes her a natural. So, watching Leslie take 100 meetings would have been fun too. The citizens of Pawnee are generally hilarious, and I'd love to see what, say, Orrin and his friends would need from her. But this was a perfectly good way to tell this story, which showed a little out-loud character development for Ron and April, and Leslie chained pointlessly to a fence.
I associate many things with many things.
Cross connection. Very little daylight between Parks and Rec and the mystical centers of my media collection, which are Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, 6 Feet Under, Joss Whedon Productions, and Ryan Murphy Productions, so 6 Murphys under Joss Whedon strips. No. Aubrey Plaza was in Agatha all along with Patti LuPone from Ryan Murphy's American Horror Story and Pose Productions. She was also in Castle with Joss' first staple, Nathan Fillion. And Nick Offerman was in The West Wing with Bradley Whitford of Studio 60. And indeed, Whitford made an appearance in Parks and Rec along with Rob Lowe, who himself had lead roles in The West Wing and Parks and Rec, though with appearances in Bob's Burgers, Will and Grace, and The Umbrella Academy. And individually, Aubrey Plaza and Nick Offerman both appeared in Noah Hawley Productions, Legion, and Fargo, respectively. It feels like their presence in my collection is much more prominent than that. I encountered a lot of cross-connections in this set, starting with title production, which I'll lead with coming up here in my classic collection discussion. Francis Conroy of 6 Feet Under appeared in 7 episodes of Happy Town on ABC, running the insane asylum there, well, pretty much the town. Dan Butler from Frasier appeared in a first season episode of Supernatural, alongside, I almost mentioned her last time, Jane McGregor, who I also have an episode of the 4400, again, the original one, the good one on USA, not the histrionic one on the CW, as well as 4th season episodes of Fringe and Listener, seasons after I stopped watching that show. And she was also in a first season episode of Fargo. I saw Robert Englund in a 5th season episode of Bones, where they really leaned into his work as Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, casting him as a school janitor who used to title character Temperance Bones Brennan dead creatures for her to dissect. I believe he's more usually in my collection as Willie from the original run of V. I also encountered the 3rd season and broadcast finale of Damages, featuring Timothy Olyphant, more recently of Justified, and acknowledged Golden Thread Zeljko Ivanek. Appearing here is a recurring hallucination of murdered underling Ray Fisk to Ted Danson's Arthur Frobisher. Speaking of Justified, a first season episode of that show turned up Robert Picardo of Star Trek Voyager and Tony Hale of Arrested Development. I found John Barrowman of Doctor Who and Torchwood in 6 season episodes of Desperate Housewives, along with Diane Farr of Numbers and Rescue Me. I got long-acknowledged Golden Thread Stephen Weber of Studio 60 hitting on Mary in a 3rd season In Plain Sight, and in the series finale of Accidentally on Purpose, I encountered Larry Widmore of The Daily Show and Ted Bagley, who was all over my collection, but most usually of Monk as Harold Crenshaw, nemesis to the title character, mainly due to each other trying to outdo the other with Dr. Kruger, their psychiatric care provider for most of the series. First season Supernatural's faith healing episode, I saw Julie Benz. I see her way more usually in here in Joss Whedon's Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, and Dexter alongside Michael C. Hall of 6 Feet Under. Then Krinstin Chenowith of Pushing Daisies, West Wing, and Wicked recurred as Amber Rhodes in the first season episode of Glee. I found Martha Plimpton from Raising Hope in a 2nd season episode of Fringe, Lisa Simpson herself, Yeardley Smith in a 3rd season episode of The Big Bang Theory, and another from Doctor Who. I've got River Song. Alex Kingston appeared in an episode of Flash Forward. I also ran into Loretta Devine in the first season episode of Supernatural, and scrolling back I realized she certainly qualifies as a golden thread throughout my collection. Golden thread. Along with taking on more or less Zelda Rubinstein's role as Tangina from Poltergeist in the Supernatural I found her in, I would first likely have seen her in Lisa Bonet's A Different World, then probably in Sherman Hemsley's Amen, though I wasn't following that one as closely. I see she was in Murphy Brown, Ned and Stacy, Touched by an Angel, then moving into where she's more likely to be in my archive, I see she was in I Am Sam, Crash, she was in Boston Legal, she was also in Glee, she was Mrs. Weber in Grey's Anatomy, and I see she was in the Psych episode as well, but here's where she is best represented in my collection. Loretta Devine was Eli Stone's assistant, Patty Delacroix, in every episode of Eli Stone. Devine presents a broad range of storytelling needs as demanded by her characters. She runs the gamut as Dr. Webber's concerned wife Adele in Grey's Anatomy, and in Eli Stone, recognizing she is often providing exposition or comic relief doesn't bar her from hitting deeper notes in the storytelling, providing stakes that otherwise might be absent and leaving the set a bit blank. She's able to hold focus, convey concern among his loved ones, and in general attempt stability in a situation where the title character, her boss, can be reacting to any ridiculous hallucination at any time. It's a lot, but she held her own. Good work. Diving into my classic collection. My classic collection of VHS DVD transfers this time covers discs 1801 through 1825, and as I mentioned up there, had some significant discoveries. On discs 1820 and 1825, I enjoyed encountering the first two episodes of creepy murder mystery series Happy Town, the first of two shows in this set, as I mentioned up top, featuring a dead body found in an ice fishing house. I said I'd explain. I took a few notes, but in all honesty, this is another situation where the me from a former life, Terry J. Aman, host of TV is the New Reading, had a perfectly good summary of the production opener. I'd almost say better, but here, let's check in with him.
In this week's topic, ABC's Happy Town is a nice Midwestern murder mystery. Welcome to Haplin, Minnesota. Happy Town to some of its residents. The ones with no sense of irony. Probably most Haplinians are reasonably happy. The Our Daily Bread Factory employs a tenth of the town's population, has a nice, wholesome, vaguely sanctified sensibility. It makes the whole town smell of freshly baked bread, which is charming. The jaw-droppingly well-staffed sheriff's department hasn't had a thing to do since the Magic Man abductions happened mysteriously some years ago, and even up until then, they'd only had about one disappearance or so per year to investigate. Family members raise a fuss in every public forum they can, but no one is any closer to finding them. In the opening scenes of ABC's serial mystery Happy Town, a murderer commits a big splashy murder, pounding a railroad spike through the head of an older gentleman who was out fishing in an ice house on the very eve of Thawfest, when the sheriff's deputy was on the verge of putting his boat back in the water. Ice Out is clearly progressing at different rates around Haplin, or maybe Thawfest is celebrating something other than the spring thaw. One thing this year's Thawfest is not celebrating is the memory of the missing Haplinians. Our Daily Bread Factory owner Jon Hamm, the father of an 8-year-old girl who went missing 5 years back, is one of several family members trying to raise a banner in memory of the missing. Sheriff Griffin Conroy is having none of it. Of course, he's got his own issues. Half of his personality is continuing an investigation into a woman named Chloe, who no one else knows anything about. He becomes so agitated over it, he takes a hatchet to his own hand. His son, Tommy, fears he's in the early stages of Alzheimer's. This would be a sensible conclusion to draw, except Griffin has quite possibly already seen Chloe without even realizing it. Chloe is staying in Dot Meadows' boarding house under the name of Henley Boone. She has some connection with a strange symbol painted here and there around Haplin, a question mark with a halo, in that it is tattooed on her shoulder. Henley claims to be in town spending her inheritance after losing her parents, but she receives a phone call from her mother, identifies herself as Chloe, and climbs the stairs to the 3rd floor of the boarding house, which is forbidden and could get her kicked out if she's discovered. Ooh. She forms an alliance of sorts with Merritt, a strange Englishman who has been staying at the boarding house since moving to Haplin 3 months before to open a movie memorabilia shop. A single, charming, older gentleman, Merritt has caused something of a stir with the other boarders in Dot Meadows' boarding house. 4 ladies, all of a certain age. One of them is determined to establish a relationship with him. It's hard to believe in the space with a communal shower someone hasn't already, but let's leave some elements to development. Also, there's no immediate reason to believe the Magic Man murdered the older gentleman in the ice house, Jerry Fiddle, who some Haplinians suspect was a pervert. With the other disappearances, the Magic Man left a memento from the victim, a backpack or a book or something, and the body was never recovered. If the Magic Man stayed true to form, the body would have disappeared, and there was a hole in the ice right there for the body to be disappeared into. In this case, he left a corpse with a big hole in its head. He also left a witness. Georgia, a teenage girl who's afraid to come forward. I found the mystery to be gruesome and compelling. Certainly whatever shadow investigation is possessing Sheriff Griffin to chop off his hand with a hatchet is. I also found the history of the Magic Man to be strange. All I know is between John's wife's quiet madness over her daughter's disappearance, Sheriff Griffin's compulsion to ask strange, non-sequitur questions about Chloe from time to time, and a new girl in town with some cryptic connection to it, things aren't as wholesome in Happy Town as the name would suggest. Side note, I saw this week's Happy Town, and they are moving these stories along rapidly. The Stivalettos got a beat down after Georgia was drugged and turned up at their farm. Sheriff Conroy uncovers a beautiful mined lair in the basement of the pizza guy's mother. I can't wait to see what they find wherever Friddle told him to go and look for the bodies. Also, the birds in the attic at Dot Meadows' boarding house and the goat-headed hammer Chloe found there were wicked creepy, as was that hawk attack on the roadside. P.S. Frances Conroy as Old Lady Haplin is a glorious addition to this storyline as the old lady in charge of the town, who completed an ice skating rink in her yard the year her granddaughter disappeared. 3 guesses as to what might be under that thing. Ooh.
Thank you, Terry. Terry J. Aman, everyone, from 2010. I do want to feature this show like I did with Harper's Island and Reunion, but I'll wait till a few more episodes emerge so I can really get my teeth into it. For now, mostly I'd add to my comments under Cross Connections, where I noted the involvement of Frances Conroy from 6 Feet Under. The show also featured Amy Acker from Joss Whedon's Angel and Dollhouse series. Very nice. Moving on, I talked about my appreciation of Shakespeare several times in this production, highlighting Catherine Tate's comic recitation of the sonnet in episode 98, Disrespecting the House of Cooper, the Minot production of Romeo and Juliet, and the Bismarck production of Merry Wives of Windsor I was in episode 83, Make It a Word and a Blow. My love for Shakespeare-themed CBC production, Slings and Arrows in episode 18, All the World's a Stage, and of course, last summer's Capital Shakespeare production of Hamlet in episode 95, Dead for a Ducat, which included comments on Hamlet 2 and a 2023 Shakespeare in the Park production of Hamlet in Central Park. In this set, on discs 1816, 1817, and 1818, I encountered a PBS Great Performances production of Hamlet featuring David Tennant and Sir Patrick Stewart. This Hamlet is all the things. It is, well, I wanted to say minimalist, but how can you characterize it as such when you've got David Tennant toe-to-toe with Patrick Stewart, first climbing right out of hell to terrify him as his late father, then smarming all over his mother as the young Dane barely restrains himself from gagging. This Hamlet showed up knowing there was something rotten in Denmark and it's got a crown on it. Stewart has done all of the Shakespeare. His Jean-Luc Picard in Star Trek The Next Generation had a first folio in his ready room, which totally makes sense. We try to put historical artifacts at battle-ready spaceships so that when we drift into disputed territory, the destruction can be ever so much more devastating. But yeah, no, in fact, get the Declaration of Independence in, what's that doing out here? It belongs in the bathroom the way I'm using it and behind some fancy dark curtains so no one knows for sure when it got stolen. Or when it gets stolen. I mean, if it gets stolen. What? Yeah, from like the first episode of Next Generation, Picard was all about the Shakespeare. Per IMDb, Internet Broadway database, Stewart has played Macbeth in Macbeth, Prospero in The Tempest, and Tom Snout in A Midsummer Night's Dream. For Royal Shakespeare Company, which is harder to navigate. That is, he could literally have been in every production, but the site is only searchable by notices. The RSC had him on stage as Anthony in Anthony and Cleopatra, another Prospero in Another Tempest, had him as Shylock in The Merchant of Venice, as Leontes in A Winter's Tale, as King John in King John, and as Lance in Two Gentlemen of Verona, and per my more usual source of IMDb, he played John Lear in King of Texas, took on Enobarbus in the 1970s Anthony and Cleopatra. He was Bill in Romeo and Juliet. That's not even a character. Oh, okay. So the film adaptations fell along a range, but he definitely took this one seriously. And if you got Tennant and Stewart in a production of Hamlet, filmed in 2009 and aired on PBS in 2010, if there's any confusion, you use the long adaptation, 3 hours per IMDb, and like I said, minimal. They rarely dress the set beyond the physical requirements for establishing and supporting the scene. I think Gertrude's bedroom, it's Penny Donnie as Gertrude, her bedroom is the most completely dressed scene in the production. But even with the Spartan staging, there were other filming conventions they used in telling the story. Like, Every so often the perspective would shift to an overhead security cam view, emphasizing the overheard, overseen, supervised space this production takes place in. Polonius's penchant, that's Oliver Ford Davies as Polonius, his penchant for eavesdropping, for hiding and spying, particularly on his daughter, Mariah Gale as Ophelia, leaving us with the mercurial nature of David Tennant's Hamlet. The man is made of energy, just buzzing, fizzing inscrutability, thrown to the floor with the appearance of his late father in full battlefield regalia, seething, barely controlled rage in confronting first Claudius and then Gertrude, the crackling whiplash of his mask insanity, the furious, palpable indecision binding him, standing over Claudius in prayer. I admit to annoyance in this conversation with the grave tender, but it's no more than was written. Just Mark Hadfield, grave tender, is just so certain everyone is there to see him that there's no air in the room for anyone else. And when you consider that one of the else is David Tennant eulogizing York, one of the more prominent remembrances in English literature, it's a measure of how much focus that gravedigger is pulling. Pro tip: if you aren't named, particularly if the play is 5 hours long and you are exactly 6 minutes of it, if you are not named and you're playing opposite the title character, how about step it down a skosh? But in the end, it is David Tennant in his flawless performance in a role I feel he shrugged into like a warm, comfy, much-beloved bathrobe. He was living this story, living every beat, every moment of this story, knew, sparked, engaged with his fellow cast members, all of whom, well, Polonius always going to annoy me a little, that's what he's for, but everyone showed up and did this. It was a remarkable telling. One of the best, no, wait, probably this is my favorite telling of this story. Out of the park. Yorick, no! Come back! Speaking of David Tennant, I found his successor, number 11, Matt Smith, in a couple episodes of Doctor Who, significant entries near the beginning of its run on discs 1804, 1805, and 1812. The 11th hour established Karen Gillan as Amy Pond, the girl who waited from when she was 6 years old to the night before her wedding, then finding herself in the Space Island UK database some 10,000 years later, marital status at that point still unknown. The girl did a lot of waiting. Final appearance in this set, disc 1819, featured Ian McNeice as Winston Churchill. The Doc confronted passive standard issue Daleks Churchill said were going to help them win World War II. They were just decoys, however, along with an android they'd crafted to make it seem like the Daleks had been created by people. Instead, the actual Daleks, the 4 members of the cult of Skaro, assigned to think like the enemy so as to better attack them, were waiting for the Doctor to show up so they could attack him. They did this with an adorable Dalek-shaped recording device the size of a lime that confirmed his identity. The presence of Daleks in Doctor Who post the War Doctor has always been iffy. Ninth Doctor Christopher Eccleston found a dusty old model mothballed in Arizona. Tennant faced down an army of extra-dimensional Daleks who crossed the void from D-space, and now Matt's got covert ops Daleks who crafted an android so as to craft themselves and then later show up as humanoid projections, all inside the Pandorica. It's a little too sneaky, but I guess that's all going to reveal itself as more episodes continue to emerge. On disc 1802, I encountered White Tulip, a significant second season episode of Fringe, featuring Peter Weller, Mr. Yin from my psych discussion, episode 99, getting up to speed. Weller here played Dr. Alistair Peck, a time-traveling physicist who piggybacked on Walter Bishop and William Bell's equations to craft a practical looping mechanism, similar to the one we saw with Stephen Root in season 4, and for similar reasons. The move involved a skin suit directly out of the 4th season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, layers of skin and integrated circuitry worn over his body like a wetsuit that, when activated, would transport him to a point in his past. Very dangerous, but he was single-minded. Peck told Walter Bishop, John Noble as mad scientist Walter Bishop, he hoped to hop back far enough to save his fiancée's life. He would leave him a sign if he succeeded, he said, a white tulip, the drawing of which appeared among his effects in the final scene. Quite trippy. Also very random, but per IMDb, Canadian actor Richard Harmon appeared in this episode. He isn't himself significant to my collection, but I clicked on him anyway. When Dr. Peck time jumped to the past, his math dropped him inside a subway car. Harmon was outside carrying a cardboard sign saying, "God may be watching," as his character, Harmon's character, picked people's pockets. He wasn't in a lot of stuff I recognize. Apart from Fringe, he's in a couple episodes of Kung Fu on the CW, The Killing on AMC, and Capricorn Sci-Fi. Apparently there's a TV Clue franchise I never heard of. But I did not remember the show Continuum. There's a reason. The show started in 2012 and ended in 2015, which coincides exactly with my dark ages when I wasn't watching TV at night because I was building pages for a statewide daily, up through when I left for a small print shop. Never saw the thing. Continuum, I checked it out. It's a speculative futuristic time jumper starring Rachel Nichols, and as such it was made specifically for me to watch and enjoy. I pull it up and realize this is the best possible time for me to secure at least the first season of Continuum, and while I'm thinking about them, Millennium and Profiler, two other productions I've wanted to rewatch for years, and this one reminded me of. I called them up and placed my order. So, if nothing else, encountering this copy of Fringe, and specifically Canadian actor Richard Harmon's involvement with it, inspired me to expand my media collection a bit further. What else? Well, on discs 1802 and 1803, I ran into IFC's presentation of the 1992 release, The Crying Game. Forrest Whitaker is Jody, a large, cute, and cuddly ex-soldier who sadly falls for a honeypot scam. Miranda Richardson is Jude. She pulled him aside for a snog, and a team from the Irish Republican Army nabbed him for a hostage exchange, for which in 3 days he may pay with his life. So much of this first segment, too much really, is the development between Whitaker as Jody and Stephen Ray as Fergus. So, I'm sitting in a movie theater in the 1990s having paid $5 for the ticket and $15 worth of popcorn and soda to see this psychological snooze fest. It's just, Jody's been tied up and blindfolded for about half an hour or so, and it's mostly just him and Fergus getting involved in each other's stories. Then, 40 minutes in, there's a security breach. Jody is killed by the army and their secure location is blown up. Fergus buggers right off and changes his name. Now Jimmy, he tracks down Jody's lover, Jay Davison as Dill, a stylist with a secret of her own. Well, it's been 30 years since the release date, so it's likely that's not much of a secret at this point, but what I wasn't getting right away was the Hitchcock construction of the story. Massive amount of time devoted to developing storyline A, and then a middle third devoted entirely to completely different storyline B, the only one I'd heard of going into this movie, incidentally, which probably contributed to my reaction. Dill's got an abusive boyfriend when he meets her. Jimmy is drawn to rescue her, at first out of regard for Jody, and then by his growing affection for her. Dill frequents a drag bar, which is where Jimmy's feelings for her develop further. I guess what I'm reacting to is I'm getting such a Kids in the Hall vibe off the trans performers and the other trans women in the place. It seems obvious from the jump that Dill is transgender, but Jimmy is very slow on the uptake. How will he react to the truth? Well, poorly at first, but then he realizes he's got feelings for her all the same. When she comes visit him at work, he apologizes and asks for a second chance. At this point, the A plot collides with the B plot, like the bad guys coming back into shot in that Aha video, and the rest of the movie happens. Jimmy, Fergus, first protects Dill from the IRA by cutting her hair and disguising herself as a man, in Jody's cricket uniform actually, so decidedly baggy. Jody was a British soldier taken as hostage by the IRA, who then send Jude to target Dill through her association with Fergus. Dill sees Jimmy with Jude and demands to know what's going on. Jimmy tells Dill that Jody sent him to her to look after her. Dill doesn't believe him and ties him to the bed. This scene would clearly work a lot better in a stage production. It felt really artificial on screen. What's going on is Fergus' surviving IRA contacts are trying to abduct a judge in broad daylight, and they want a hostage to exchange with themselves, but they're clearly idiots and they all die in the attempted abduction. Meanwhile, Dill's demanding a declaration of love from Jimmy at gunpoint while he's tied to the bed when Jude comes in to abduct her. Dill shoots her, but not before she calls Jimmy Fergus. Dill then turns the gun on Fergus, demanding to know what happened to Jody. Fergus tells her, declares his love, and tells Dill to go into hiding. He'll come find her when it's safe. The cameras cut away, during which interval Dill runs, hides. The police arrive, untie Fergus from the bed, and he's given 10 years for all the crimes he was involved with as a member of the IRA. Dill comes to the prison to visit Fergus, the closest remaining connection she has with the love of her life, Jody. This film, The Crying Game, never seems to reference the title much beyond the 1960s song covered by Boy George in 1992 that Dill then performs at the club. Set present day, early 90s, the show spoke in cross currents by referencing conditions for transsexuals as well as social and political impacts of the IRA and Troubles. The UK officially decriminalized homosexuality in 1967. However, per The Guardian, anti-gay laws were still in force through 2013. A podcaster I follow, Terry Geo's Refracted World, traced an excellent timeline based on his own experience growing up gay in Great Britain. I'll share the link to that episode in my show notes, but it was obviously not a socially safe way to identify for anyone. Fergus as a member of the IRA and Dell as a trans woman. From the lens of 2025, I feel like the story could have been told in about 90 minutes. The extended interaction between Jodie and Fergus was way too involved, and the IRA tracking Fergus down in the final third of the movie was just too convoluted. Too many different scenes that advanced the plot far too slowly. But it's entirely possible that at the time it just needed to be told like this to properly explore all of the IRA drama and then all of the transgender drama. I will say this, contemporary releases like the 1994 Australian-based Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and 1995 Midwestern romp Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Love Julie Newmar, and Oh Mon Dieu, La Cage aux Folles, Robin Williams, and Nathan Lane 1996 remake The Birdcage, and R.I.P. Gene Hackman as Senator Keeley. Fond reflection. But they were all joyous, poignant, and appropriately political without at any point feeling, however ironic this phrasing, like they dragged. In those latter instances, of course, the drag milieu was the primary focus, whereas in The Crying Game it shared the stage with a whole other universe of political upheaval. I just felt that time and energy could have been divided better. Regardless, it's been in my collection for years now, and I'm glad finally to have watched it. Then on disc 1805, I found the third season and broadcast finale of Damages. I mentioned up there an incredible episode. Bombshell revelations about Martin Short's Leonard Winstone character, about Rose Byrne's Ellen Parsons' late fiancé, and series-length comeuppance for Ted Danson's Arthur Frobisher character. The episode closed on a scene with Ellen and Glenn Close's Patty Hughes graveside beneath a cover of Leonard Cohen's Everybody Knows. Holly Figueroa's Per Last.fm. I didn't see seasons 4 or 5 of Damages until we signed up for Hulu a few years ago, at which point I got to see a bunch of shows I hadn't had access to before, including Cougar Town, which had just dropped off the schedule at TBS when I determined I wanted to archive it. Ralph and I had been watching episodes of Cougar Town on TBS for years, and whatever the reason, I was not archiving them. I knew I only had some of them in my classic collection. I love encountering them here and there, like I did on disc 1825, the first season Friends with Benefits episode for Jules and Grayson. Fun show. Not the best post-Friends production of the bunch. That's probably the late Matthew Perry's appearances in Studio 60 on Sunset Strip as well as in The West Wing, but it's some of Courtney Cox's finest post-Friends work, certainly among the most entertaining. Sure, Scream is fine, Dirt is fine, but Cougar Town is just so gory much fun. Oh, what else? Just a lot of stuff in this set. Disc 1815 late series episode of Mercy, I encountered just the wildest escape attempt I've ever seen in a hospital. This one, the staff are dealing with a bunch of prisoners, most cuffed to their beds, and when a nurse is prepping one to transport for a CAT scan, he waits till his cuffs are off, cuffs the nurse to the bed frame, then attacks the officer helping to get on the gurney, climbs up on the bed frame and into the drop ceiling. This is visually remarkable, but the silliest potential. Okay, so first thing, you'd never get the cuffs on Nurse Callahan, Taylor Schilling as Nurse Veronica. She's a returned veteran. She's got heightened situational awareness from a recent attack at a diner she's been reacting to all the time at this point. But then you've got the prisoner climbing around up there like he's Bender from the Breakfast Club, but everybody saw him go up there. The drop ceilings are contained inside the rooms, and as soon as the doctor puts hands to a broom and a passing housekeeping cart, they determine where he is and back out through the ceiling onto the floor with a mess of collapsed ceiling tiles. I mean, okay, it seemed clever at first, but wow, the "you'll never catch me now" vibe is adorable when you think about it at all. Especially since from his "now is my chance" springing into action, that patient had likely been plotting it all afternoon. Well, certainly the writing, directing, and camera team had been. It was really fun to watch. Also that disc, South Park had an intervention for Towley, but the B story with the developmentally disabled at Cap Tartacaka, its various misadventures for the participants, such as an especially amorous freshwater shark and a hilarious Looney Tunes callback to Jimmy trying to play those endearing young charms on a ukulele primed with C4 explosives.
Oh, sorry, that's not right. Hang on.
Also on disc 1822, I had the Casa Bonita and Chef Aid episodes. Oh, having encountered a parody of Michael Caine on this project last time, I enjoyed his interview on The Daily Show turning up in my collection, also on disc 1815. But even more delightful was, I mentioned up there, Jon Stewart's It Was Nothing Short of Heroism, the demonstration of his capping the tragic BP oil spill, which I found in disc 1825. Now, I was unable to post copyrighted material to VideoFuzzy's channel on YouTube, nor can I find a link to share from Comedy Central or Paramount Plus, Kel Damage. I did, however, post some heroism to VideoFuzzy's Instagram page. Enjoy. And speaking of misuse of copyrighted material,
I learned it by watching you.
on disc 1810 I found the 6th season episode of The Office that ran Kevin's voice over footage of the Cookie Monster from Sesame Street. Brian Baumgartner as Cookie, Kevin, is upset, and corporate liaison gets after everyone for their bullying behavior. A couple of good communities in this set. One on disc 1808 took in the everyone needs something trope explored in the second season for want of a boot episode in MASH to a truly meta space when the study group notices that only some of the students get chicken tenders in the cafeteria, and Daddy Putty as Abed bends a power dynamic unrecognizably to get everyone chicken tenders, along with everything they could ever want. Everyone, that is, except Joel McHale as Jeff Winger, which becomes the fatal flaw. Then, on disc 1818, a small group of obnoxious, apparently ineluctable high schoolers follows the study group all over so as to make fun of them and their life choices, making me wonder, not for the first time, if the school could use a bit more structure. Where the hell is Jim Rash as the dean, and would his completely self-unaware presence have helped or hurt in this situation? Starring Lisa Rinna as Mark's mom, who, indeed, has got it going on. I mentioned The Daily Show up there, and its follow-up, Stephen Colbert had a few fun musical acts at his show, celebrated one of them, OK Go, in the most 2010 of styles, running his opening credits as a Rube Goldberg device a la their music videos. Then, ahead of his interview with them, Stephen stepped onto a running treadmill, which production assistants slid over to his interview space. Speaking of credit sequences, in a couple season 21 appearances of The Simpsons in this archive, the closing credits in episode 19 featured a recording of Le Mire. I'm not sure which version, but it was decidedly French. Then the opening credits for episode 20 are the members of the Simpsons family running through a slowed-down version of a decidedly more complicated whirlwind tour of Springfield to the tune of Kesha's TikTok, closing on the townspeople lofting the family over their heads on the couch like they're dancing the hora. Finally, this set turned up the first couple episodes of a strange art-centered public television production titled Minnesota Original. I can only characterize it as such since, well, it's called Minnesota Original, but the focus is entirely on the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul and surrounding. And the series opener, my assumption is they'd address the audience and talk about it a little bit, what they're hoping to accomplish, what put these particular artists in front of us. Instead, cold open, we're introduced to a sculptor, a photographer, some musicians, a painter. Really just, is this representative? Then second episode, I've got dancers, a historical artist, pianist. I mean, these are the only episodes I'm aware of. And what is this? A promotion? Community calendar? Well, whatever it is, per IMDb, it's the first 7 seasons, closing in 2016, which, okay, well, having covered regional artists pretty extensively for a county weekly, you get a pretty good range of arts and crafts, creative and commercial, and without much more to go on, the documentary category seems to fit. Every week they aimed their camera on people committing art for 30 minutes, then was on to the next set for next week. Not uninteresting, but unless you lived there, likely not something you'd be able to connect with too easily. I don't know how many of these things I've got in my archive, and after seeing the first 2, I'm not sure how many I want either.
What I've been watching.
As I mentioned in my Fringe discussion, my copy of Continuum's first season arrived last week, and, I figured I'd watch an episode. I remembered instantly why I've always enjoyed Rachel Nichols. She's got such an otherworldly, out-of-her-own-time energy to her that really works in this time jumper. Rachel Nichols plays Kira Cameron, a law enforcement agent in Vancouver, 2077. She's completely within her element. Her uniform is wearable tech, armed with multiple defensive capabilities. Her comm equipment is embedded. She is a walking mobile defense unit. And today she is overseeing the public execution of 8 prisoners responsible responsible for terrorism against corporations. Vancouver is different in 2077. So these prisoners are brought to the site of the public execution, and with very little preamble, last words, list of their names, crimes against I was going to say state, but their crimes are against corporations. In 2077, the corporations bailed out the government. What a twist! And the power structure is entirely subverted. The prisoners have all brought with them part of a device that, when they combine it in the presence of a power source, explodes in a time vortex that pulls the 8 of them and Lady Miss Kira into the distant past, from their perspective, 2012. From her perspective, the cybernetic law enforcement protect her from decades in the future. She wasn't part of the plan and made it go wonky. She lands in an alleyway with one of the death row inmates, Lucas, in a reign of chaos, destruction of overpasses that present-day investigators note should have been explosions, but the debris carries no sign of powder burns. Well, Kira helps local cops apprehend Lucas and hides out for the night in a hotel room she rented using funds from an ATM, Sue whispered. She's the good guy, and she was abducted from her own time. We don't care about her theft. She's busy coordinating with the creator of her cybersuit, Eric Knutson's Alex Sadler, who just invented the comm interface and is shocked to discover its functioning. Between Alex and Carlos, that is, Victor Weber as Carlos Finegra, Kira is putting some theories together about the other 7 fugitives from the future. They plot bold chaos, army surplus chicanery, cop takedowns, daylight bank heists, but Kira knows their motives and tracks them to an abandoned building for action-adventure firefight. Like, she has a video game-style menu on her wrist that allows her to deploy an electric charge, for instance, and she does it. But unfortunately, the future terrorists' plan works, and they rescue Lucas in all the confusion. Okay, look, this is... How do 8 prisoners on death row, however Luigi Mangione popular as they very well might be, on the day of their execution secure prototypical time travel tech? I mean, this seemed to take everyone by surprise. Well, everyone but Alec, who's pretty sure this would all go down exactly the way it did. Well, Alec is one of the power brokers. His corporation is among the largest and most successful, coordinating powerful law enforcement tech that, in his time, helped keep society very ordered, despite his long, from his perspective, collaboration with Kira, or maybe because of it. He's very rah-rah law and order and boo civil rights. Well, he pays a bit of lip service to the concept at the execution, but his choice to make it all happen is to, somehow slip them all part of a time travel device which they can spontaneously assemble in situ and power by executioner's pylon, that if the malfunction were to require the presence of Kira in her suit, then it wouldn't be a malfunction, but if it weren't a malfunction, what are they doing in 2012 instead of 2071? Why didn't they simply vanish? I suppose from everyone else's perspective they did, but even overshooting by a factor of 10, time travel is still problematic because they're not the only ones moving. It's the White Queen problem from Through the Looking Glass. She finds one must travel very quickly indeed in order to stay in the same place. Between the movement of the planet, the movement of the sun, and the movement of the galaxy, we're simply not in the same place, physically speaking, from 65 years to the next, or 6 even. Most of the time you'll land up in the inky black coldness of space, and the vast majority of the alternatives to that are not good. Hockey players understand this. In a big empty rink, you gotta skate to where the puck is gonna be. Doctor Who solves this by their tech moving in space as well as time. These people had a literal handful of experimental tech that none of them could have developed or should have had access to. Even if you generously account for the presence of a cybersuit in the mix, how does that get you the approximately 670 trillion miles you need to meet up with where the planet was 65 years ago? I'm saying approximations. How are you even going to calculate that position with regards to the curvature of space-time? You know what? It's Rachel Nichols as Terminator cop solving crime in the distant past, like any reasonably well-outfitted police officer showing up in 1950 with a cell phone and possibly a charger. You won't get a signal, but you can take pics and video and pretty much be a superhero. Show up with an Apple Watch and you'll pretty much be Dick Tracy. She at least gets to coordinate with the guy who developed the tech that became her cybersuit, so that's helpful. The stakes are reasonably good. I mean, it occurs to me that she can communicate with her future self very easily. I mean, she She works in law enforcement. She knows where she's going to be for most of her life. Any reasonably stable law firm can hold a message for her until, you know what? She can avert everything. She can message herself all the details of every crime she ever solved before it happens, before anyone is hurt or killed, before the towers explode, before the terrorist attacks even begin, before anyone would even deem them necessary. She could change her world entirely and craft an entirely new timeline. Now she has to figure out whether that's preferable. Intriguing. Well, that was all just from the pilot episode. I'm absolutely looking forward to watching more. Moving on, I also mentioned my birthday up there, and I was finally able to take in Marvel's bold Captain America, Brave New World. It ain't subtle. Post-Thanos' disco snap, and I guess Steve Rogers, to borrow a phrase from Doctor Who, taking the long way around, a new Captain America was named Sam Wilson, played by Anthony Mackie, complete with glittery new vibranium armor crafted by the reclusive Wakandans. This left the Falcon suit available for Joaquin Torres, played by Danny Ramirez. The suit is one thing, though. Sam wanted Joaquin to get some training, so he hooked him up with former super soldier Isaiah Bradley, played by Carl Lumley. While there, Sam is summoned by President Ross to the White House and brings Joaquin and Isaiah along. Isaiah's got opinions about Ross and the 30 years he spent as prisoner, subjected to experiments, but he grudgingly comes along. There's apparently also been some pressure from the president to reassemble the Avengers. We get a little window on the trouble everyone's been having with the wartime general elected president, Harrison Ford as President Ross, a hothead with an estranged daughter, Betty. He was just barely holding it together before a White House presentation turned bloody. A half-dozen sleeper agents are activated and target the president, Isaiah among them. When he comes to, he has no idea what he's done, but is taken into custody without further incident. That's where we are about 20 minutes into the film, and I don't love spoiling stuff that just came out, but just structurally, the rest of the show tracks an insidious mind control agent, Tim Blake Nelson as Samuel Stearns, through to a military showdown with America's allies brought to a head by a disastrous, out-of-control president. And if anyone is having trouble with the parallels here, there is no helping you. I mean, it does feel like lots of people are just able to walk right into spaces we could expect to be fastidiously secured, and most of the loss and destruction is regrettable and avoidable in a way you'd think would hit different in the wake of half the world vanishing in a cloud of dust, but here we all are. I just wanted to highlight solid performances by Giancarlo Esposito as Sidewinder, Shira Haas as Ruthbot Saroff, William Mark McCullough as Big Friendly Helper Bear Commander Dennis Dunphy, and, oh wow, Shosha Roquemore as Chief of Staff Leela Taylor. Shoutouts as well to Liv Tyler as Betty and Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes. I'm not sure they were on screen for a minute, but I enjoyed what they brought to their scenes. Big action-adventure movie was big and action-y and adventure-y. I enjoy Mac as Cap. I enjoyed his energy with Ramirez as a Falcon, definitely in need of training. Ford gave us a credibly flawed leader to drive the story, and Nelson was deliciously sinister. Recent events made Lumley's Isaiah all the more sympathetic. As Cap said, it's hard enough for someone like him to get a seat at the table. There's a lot of pressure, and if he doesn't work all the harder to prove himself, it won't happen. Like I said, not subtle, but enjoyable. Holding to the superhero theme and trying to put as much respectful space between my comments on this movie and my review of Queen Charlotte, given our move to Utah, my sister recommended the 1997 release Orgasmo. Hence, I have watched a very silly film. Trey Parker wrote, directed, starred, and cooked food for this ridiculous, very formulaic comedy action adventure. He played Joe Young, an elder and missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the irreverence builds from there. I will not be indulging in many descriptions or depictions of this extraordinarily silly film, beyond breathing a sigh of relief that I only rented it and do not own it, nor have I added it to my archive, so it is not actually in my collection. Otherwise, I'd have to notice that Diane Bashar played sidekick Chota Boy, brilliant MIT inventor Ben Shplesky, who appeared with Nathan Fillion in Two Guys, a Girl at a Pizza Place, putting Orgasmo one step removed from the Joss-verse and frighteningly close to the mystical centers of my media collection. Joe needs money to give his fiancée, Robin Lynn, as Lisa the temple wedding of her dreams, and one day the means to secure that fall directly and specifically in his lap when he is cast in a pornographic superhero-themed film. While he manages to keep himself pure, it is at the expense of his seemliness, Lisa's trust, and occasional continuity issues, but his indie porno film is a hit, and his director, Max Orbison, insists he shoot a sequel, and as many sequels as he demands. Joe refuses and storms off the set, but thugs nab Lisa and tie her up on the set of a porno. Her virtue thus imperiled, all seems lost. But wait, what's this? With help from his trusted sidekick, Ben, Joe unleashes his inner orgasmo, rescues Lisa, and defeats the evil porn empire. Once returned to his arms, Lisa forgives Joe and seems ready to move the relationship to a new level. Shout out to Toddy Walters as John Waters-esque throw pillow. So much fun. I also found the E.E. Falco pilot Fargo, released in 2003. I first mentioned hearing about it 3 years ago now in the spring of 2022 in episode 82, Expanding My Mystical Center. I searched for it on Google, then IMDb, then Amazon. I was not having any luck with viewing options. Well, for one thing, it's not a movie, or a remake for that matter. It's a pilot, and it wasn't picked up. Fargo is a series based on the homespun Middle Western crime drama by the Coen brothers in 1996. It wasn't picked up as a series until 2014 when it starred Billy Bob Thornton and got produced by Noah Hawley. That said, E.E. Falco did a phenomenal job in her iteration, produced nearly a decade post the movie release. From the cold open, the very cold open, a middle-aged housewife helps a fella jump his car when his engine's not turning over outside a mall. She gets his car going, then shoots him at point-blank range with her husband's shotgun. There's fresh snow, so there's nothing but footprints. Falco, as the still very pregnant Sheriff Marge Gunderson, has her deputy preserve the crime scene best he can, noting that birdshot makes an awful mess at that range. They're able to get some footprints. Meanwhile, a mechanic, Norbert Anderson, is found out at the lake, having frozen to death while ice fishing. Yep, like I mentioned up top, the second of the 2 Ice House corpsicles I found in this set. His sons argue over the disposition of his body. His eldest, Fritz, can't abide the idea of his dad being buried in the cemetery. The frozen hell, he calls it. Said his dad was a Viking and should get a proper Viking funeral. Fritz steals the body from the funeral home along with someone's rust-bucket old boat and sets up a funeral pyre type situation. While this is well in keeping with the quirky nature of Middle Western crime, I'll point out that if he knew he was doing the right thing, he wouldn't have kept his mother and brother out of the loop. But it's very true that grief does not always find us at our most rational. When the police arrive on the scene to address the stolen boat, they discover that Fritz was about to light the whole thing on fire, but the boat reported stolen wasn't quite the 60-foot yacht as was described to them, stuffed full of fish-finding technology, Fabergé eggs, and maybe a Rembrandt got in there before it was stolen. It was a junky old wooden boat, perfectly suited for immolation and a Viking funeral. No objections were raised. The family was tending to their loved one according to his wishes. That and Fritz likely would have gotten less pushback from Sonny if Norbert made all those wishes more generally known. As for the murder in the parking lot, well, there's a lot going on there for Margie to figure out. The casings were reused, and the guys packing their own birdshot. She tracks their ice fishing house, but they got big ol' feet. The little shoes that match the footprints might be his wife, Anne. Well, Anne's been at the beauty shop sharing her views about postmenopausal life, the treachery of a loveless marriage, and a medical infrastructure that won't even pay attention to cheese and crackers that damn pharmacist would have just made with her estrogen replacement. These damn hot flashes. She can't take it. Well, she's maybe not... shoot, maybe she did kill him, but first she's got to get the meatloaf out of the oven. Marge follows her in time to watch her blast her husband's dinner to smithereens with a totally rational shotgun blast, at which point Anne is ready to come in. The episode ends with Marge pulling off the road because the baby's coming. Lou, her deputy, is there to help her, and when she hears her husband, Norm Gunderson, has arrived, she gives one last loud final push and finally gives birth to that baby. So, the events of this movie are clearly within a month or so of the Coen brothers' adventure, making it even more of a period piece. I enjoyed that aspect of Noah Hawley's series, that the timeline hopped around to tell a broader story of life and crime. Oh, that's interesting. I just about wrote life and crime up here in the upper Middle West. I'm more in the upper Southwest now. Gotta get more of a regional sensibility. I'm sure I'll develop it. Apart from Falco, who was outstanding, I needed to highlight Rondi Reed as Ann Mendelsohn. A pilot episode demands a lot. You're sort of inventing a universe from whole cloth. Reed had an especially complex character, and she did a phenomenal job with her. Well done. What else? Well, There was a DVD on display at the Uintah County Library that caught my eye while I was putting some notes together over there. It really has been a fantastic space for me to work on the writing portion of this project while we've been staying with Ralph's family, and the reason why it drew my attention will be obvious once I name it. Called Nostalgia, it came out in 2018 and starred Ellen Burstyn, Nick Offerman, Jon Hamm, and Catherine Keener. It's a little bit misnamed. I think I know what they were hoping to call it, and organized in a way I don't really love, but it is an absolutely fantastic movie and one I'm likely to add in my collection, either through streaming or hard copy once we get ourselves where we're going. The scene opens on a waitress at a diner handling her jewelry, a striking pendant and a ring. A customer has asked her about them. She goes into some detail about their history, passed down through generations of her family. She's expecting and anticipates gifting them to her child when they're old enough. She's telling all this to Daniel, played by John Ortiz. Daniel's a claims adjuster for an insurance company. He walks into situations before a loss, after a loss, advises about more detailed appraisals if needed, generally explores with interest the accumulations of property over a life. First stop we see him make is at a home of an elderly gentleman whose grown daughter basically wants to know if there's anything she needs to know about in her dad's house, anything he knows to be valuable. The dad, Ronnie, played by Bruce Dern, is nonplussed. Why doesn't she just come over here herself, he asks. Daniel says the daughter, Beth, played by Amber Tamblyn, was going to, but something came up. Something always comes up, Ronnie says. Daniel reports back to Bethany that there's nothing of a special value in Daniel's home, but if there's anything of sentimental significance, she may wish to identify that while he's still there. Daniel's next stop is Helen's. Helen, played by Ellen Burstyn, who I truly enjoyed in Requiem for a Dream, meets Daniel in the burned-out wreckage of their home of 30 years. She was only able to save a few items before the fire overwhelmed her, but they included a baseball of enormous sentimental significance to her as well as collector value, and she is otherwise waiting for her insurance settlement. She raised the notion, what would you save from a burning building, and their conversation traced the meaning of the baseball to why it was she saved it. It had belonged to her husband. She couldn't see leaving it behind. Helen continues her conversation with Daniel across the way with others in the neighborhood left homeless by the fire. Challenged on his apparent detachment, Daniel says he does insulate himself from the loss of his consultations, but every space he enters, every situation, he hears details he's never heard before, and all the while he knows he's the last person anyone wants to be talking with. Helen goes back to where she's staying with her son and daughter-in-law, Henry and Caitlin, played by Nick Offerman and Jennifer Mudge. They determine insurance will cover a lot, and she shouldn't feel rushed, but she won't likely be able to buy her own house. Well, this is clearly driving her crazy, and while Henry and Caitlin are clearly a little burdened by her presence, suddenly being surrounded by a young family and the chaos it engenders is no picnic for Helen either. While her family might well appreciate the sentimental value of her jewelry and the baseball, Helen puts herself in touch with an appraiser in Las Vegas, Jon Hamm's Will. She goes to visit him. He tells her the baseball is likely worth between $80,000 and $100,000, which in this market won't buy her much of a home, but might keep her independent and out of an assisted living facility. She sells the ball. The camera then shifts to Will, who is just on the road to see his sister, Catherine Keener, as Donna, who are busy with her condo-faring parents' abandoned home. There's a lot of stuff in storage and in the house, along with a lot of memories, and the two of them are joined by Donna's daughter, Annalise Basso, as Tally. Donna and Will have been going through their parents' stuff, grumbling that her brother and sister aren't there, and once Tally shows up, she immediately wants to spend the weekend with her friends. She legit spent very little time there. The memories evoked by the objects Donna and Will have been going through and agonizing over have very little meaning for her. There's a collection of vinyl LPs that Will is going through when Tally arrives, and she's like, you can just download everything now, right? Ouch. Well, he tries to explain why it's not the same, but she says, look, if there's any music you'd recommend, text me and I'll be sure to download it. Tally leaves in the attic with a record collection and a whole bunch of other stuff, and that is the last they see of her. Middle of the night on their way home from a lake, a drunk driver runs Tally and two friends off the road. One of her friends, Mikey Madison, is Kathleen, is taken to the hospital and treated for a broken leg. Tally and Hillary are killed. Well, Tally's dad, Craig, played by Chris Marquette, shows up with his wife, and they're all terribly broken up by the loss. Craig goes to Tally's room where they find a post-it note with the word "Saudade" written on it, which, when Don and Will meet her in a diner a few weeks later, Kathleen explains was important to Tally, a Portuguese word referring to a melancholy sense of nostalgia, perhaps for something that never happened. I'm pretty sure the movie was supposed to be called So Dodd, and I'm very glad it wasn't. I wouldn't in any way have picked up a movie called So Dodd. Nostalgia absolutely came home with me and hopped into my player. And the structure. I dislike movies that swing from scene to scene like a monkey through a jungle. Like, we are told this part of the story just to get to that part, and then this other part. What happens with Helen, what happens with Daniel, what happens with Ronnie and his daughter Bethany. The whole second half of the movie is Will and his sister Donna, and the terrible, pointless loss of Donna's daughter Tally. And I've been saving this one, but my biggest objection to this storytelling as presented. Craig and Will are in Tally's room. Her computer and her phone were with her when they were lost in the car crash. So Craig says there's just no memories of her. Everything is gone. In the past, you'd have books with passages underlined or worn tracks on a record to know what her favorite song is. Now, all the photos we have of her are so old, it's all gone. My dude. Okay, say for instance the data on her computer and phone are entirely unrecoverable, a conclusion that in 2018 is hardly foregone. The existence of a computer and a phone suggests Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, some other social media, if all of that is too old. The existence of three best friends, one of whom was still alive to talk to, suggests photos they'd all have shared with each other. If she did have a Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram, you've got nothing but current photos of her and favorite quotes, videos, stories. Tally was attending college on an athletic scholarship. There's all kinds of photos and video of her playing sports in high school, local television sports coverage, and oh my god, her yearbook! Dad sitting on the bed can't think of any photos any of them were going to have Tally. Her mom has photos. Every time Tally came home from anywhere, she'd have taken photos with her video, family events, pics, Tally text her video of her falling in the pool at a party. Tally's phone isn't the only digital footprint the girl is going to cast. You know, I get it. I understand what that was, the regret, the sadness, the pangs for what was in the face of unrecoverable loss, but talk about a melancholy sense of nostalgia for something that's never happened. It's tragic, senseless loss, but no one born after the year 2000 is going to be impossible to find recent photos of. That's silly. The movie highlighted the objects that accompany us through our lives, their importance to us as touchstones they provide for others, the value we place on them, value of sentiment versus intrinsic inherent value, value described by collectors, the loss in the wake of fires, devastation. The fact that I've spent this much time on this movie I saw once and turned back into the library, this movie that came out in 2018, and then a few years later our lives were all turned upside down by a pandemic. The significance of things in the wake of, well, with this move, what we were forced to leave behind versus what we could replace. I've got a broken bit of woodcraft in a pocket of my suitcase waiting for us to find our new home. The feathers carved from walnut and birch that hung for years at our front entryway. They feature a wolf and a bear. Ralph bought them for me at the first powwow we attended together in the summer of 2012. They're fragile enough they broke on the way here, but I'm hoping to repair them. They're not much, but they're significant to me. I've lost enough, especially in the past year and a half of my life, that I want to hold on to what small, meaningful ephemera that made the trip. That's not to say we've lost everything, not by any stretch. We packed a storage unit full of books, documents, a bunch of my physical media, just waiting for us to have space to move it to. Things we left behind, furniture, some tools are easily replaced. This movie, the alternate ending included on the DVD extras, was stronger, I thought. It traced a tiny précis for characters the story abandoned along the way. It wasn't especially informative, but it acknowledged and honored their part in the story we just experienced. Director Mark Pellington, co-writer with Alex Ross Perry, had some great ideas in putting this piece together. I'm glad to have encountered it like this. Another recommendation from my sister last episode, Queen Charlotte, I can now also heartily recommend. A hot-headed German teen, unconsulted and unenthusiastic about her wedding to King George III of England, Anya Amartefeo plays the younger version of Queen Charlotte just as Golda Rocheville reprises the role she plays in 3 seasons of Bridgerton. IMDb as yet declines to suggest air dates for the 4th season. Shonda Rhimes' distinctive storytelling style and instincts are everywhere apparent in the wild telling of this courtship, romance, and the early alliance between the freshly minted Queen Charlotte and Corey Milcrease as the young King George. The early days of a relationship are Ms. Rhimes' strongest suit, and she takes several different runs at this one. The king discovers his bride trying to escape the wedding. When he convinces her to go through with it, he instantly abandons her. She then tracks him down and demands her honeymoon, only to carry some further misunderstanding through to the coronation. Then there was the larger story of not only Queen Charlotte's ascension, but the implications for persons of color, their standing as well. And, well, goodness, this all aired in the first half of 2023, so spoilers, schmoilers, go watch the damn thing. The storylines wind through their present day, circa 1815 personas as well. The current contretemps at court, alliances forged and dashed, servant intrigue, gossip and scandal, the drama of social standings, and long-kept secrets coming to light between Lady Danbury and Lady Bridgerton. How these things could indeed spark to new life as the stories proceed. And in no way for the first time, how much fun is it to write like this? Anyway, my sister was right about Buffy, she was right about Bridgerton, and she was dead on the money for Queen Charlotte as well. By all means, check it out. Beyond that, it is once again well past time to get this one into the feed. Thank you all for checking in on my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com. For past episodes, add, follow, and subscribe to VideoFuzzy everywhere you get podcasts. If you get a chance, please check out my VideoFuzzy the soundtrack entries as well. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites via email, tjaman1970@yahoo.com, or through my VideoFuzzy pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing! It might be amazing, it might just be disgusting. We'll find it together on VideoFuzzy.